Hi, my name is Rick Wilson. I'm a professor in the Department of Urban and Regional Planning at Cal Poly Pomona. Welcome to this short video introducing the concept of practical judgments in planning. As I mentioned, I'm a professor at Cal Poly. I teach in the Department of Urban and Regional Planning. I also do transportation planning consulting. And have interests in both planning theory and professional practice. You may have run across my professional practice blog at the Career Center on the APA website. And throughout my career, I've had a commitment to linking theory and practice. So I contend that professional practice is like riding a bike. You have to have your eye on the horizon, the long-term view, or you might fall off. There are many choices of paths, as illustrated here in the bottom of the LA River Channel, and you have to make real-time reactions to events that occur as planning unfolds. So I believe that practical judgments are at the core of planning practice. When I reflect on my own consulting practice, I can see how many decisions I have to make in the moment about how to proceed. The idea of a practical judgment is that decisions are made based on considering the consequences of the choice, rather than planning has a guidebook or a single theory or rule that determines how we should act in a particular circumstance. And these practical judgments occur throughout the professional episode in real time. And what I'm promoting in this video is the idea of using reflection to make higher quality practical judgments. So let's talk about a couple examples to get this idea brought forward. This one is a planner working for a city. A resident comes in, wants to build a room addition. It doesn't comply with the side yard setback. The planner has choices of how to respond to the constituent. Just tell them the rules, get a supervisor involved to try and learn about precedents and how the planning department handles such an issue, or third, pull out a pencil and help them with a design idea that addresses the side yard setback. Those are three plausible courses of action. Those are an example of a practical judgment. Here's another one. Your consultant, a developer, calls you, wants assistance on parking analysis for a transit-oriented development. Again, there are different types of scope of work you could prepare. One based on technical analysis about parking demand, one based on the argument that cities should deregulate parking requirements and let the developer decide how much to build, and a third which is more communication and negotiation oriented. And again, all three courses of action are plausible, and planners must choose which way to go. So there are many types of practical judgments made in planning. This is a rather long list, but I think all these questions require practical judgments. So what information to use, what planning process to use, what values are the most important, what stakeholders are at the table and which ones aren't at the table that should be included. Ethical questions related to the AICP Code of Ethics, strategy questions, and so on. So I think my planning practice is rife with the demand to make practical judgments. And reflection can help navigate these judgments. So one type of reflection is after the fact, reflection on action. What worked, what didn't work, what was a surprise, what were some underlying structural factors that might have been invisible, basically assessing your past practice and drawing lessons from that. And the second type is in the moment reflection. Instead of going with your knee-jerk reaction, taking a pause to think about which course of action, what are the alternative courses of action, and which one is most appropriate. And when I say reflection, I don't mean sitting on the top of a mountain by oneself, thinking about oneself. I look at reflection as much more of a social process. It's not just looking in the mirror, it's perhaps looking through the mirror and around the mirror. You share your reflection with others, and ultimately reflection supports action, in my view. So the question is, what tools do we employ? What kind of framework could exist to assist planners in reflection? So I want to present to you now a framework for reflection that has three elements: this core idea of practical judgments and what factors into them, your individuality as a planner as person, and your understanding and reading of the context for the situation that you're in. So let's start with the core, which is practical judgments occur throughout planning. And in reflecting on my own practice, you may have a different set of factors, but I know I employ logic. That's classic justification for planning. I know that emotion is involved, both positive and angry, negative emotions. And can employ emotion as well as logic in making these practical judgments. Sometimes planners are imposing convention. For example, the zoning code has the design conventions of the community embedded in it. And sometimes planners are inventing the new, learning, for example, in creating a climate action plan when none existed before. So swirling around practical judgments are these factors, and perhaps you may have others. And then that is occurring in a tension between who I am, my values and commitments as a planner. I don't think we can create a firewall between who we are and our planning work. And being adept at reading context. What is the opportunity for change? How far can we move forward with stakeholders, decision makers? What's my role in the organization? All those kinds of issues. So for me, planning is this iterative process of making practical judgments, drawing on these types of considerations. And of course, I am not doing it alone. Everyone I'm interacting with in the planning process is also doing it. So that's the framework. I hope you find it useful. And if you don't, I suggest develop your own conception of how you make these practical judgments based on theory and reflecting on your practice. And my goal is to encourage planners to talk about how they make decisions when they plan. So thank you for your attention. This material is based on this book I recently published, Reflective Planning Practice, Theory, Cases, and Methods. You can see my contact information. The book has details on this reflection framework, 7 case studies that use the framework to do reflection on action on past planning episodes, and then a series of chapters suggesting how you could incorporate reflection into your practice. As well, I've developed a computer-based practical judgment simulation activity that I'd be happy to share. Just shoot me an email at the address above. Thanks so much for your attention.